She called 911, but the call reconnected her with the Mafia boss who once asked her out. Have you ever made a call that changed your life forever? What would you do if your desperate plea for help connected you with the one person from your past you never wanted to speak to again? The sound of gunshots still echoed in my ears as I frantically dialed 911, my fingers trembling against the screen. 1 ring. 2 rings. Then a click. 911, what's your emergency? I expected to hear. Instead, a deep, familiar voice answered, one I hadn't heard in 5 years but would recognize anywhere. Alicia, you were never supposed to call this number again. My blood turned to ice. Not dispatch. Not a stranger. But him. Marco Santori. The man who once made my heart race with a single smile. The man I later discovered was one of the most dangerous crime bosses in the city. The man I ghosted when I learned the truth. Marco. I whispered, pressing myself against the wall beside my window, peering through the blinds at the body still lying in the street below. How? This is impossible. I dialed 911. And yet here we are. His voice was calm, controlled, exactly as I remembered. Now tell me why you're calling emergency services at 2 a.m. There's been a shooting outside my apartment. A man is down, bleeding out. I need police, an ambulance. Get away from the windows. Now. The sudden command in his voice made me flinch. Which apartment building? Westlake Towers on 8th. But which unit? I hesitated, old instincts screaming not to tell him. Alicia. His voice softened slightly. If you called 911, they'd ask the same questions. Which unit? 5C. Pack a bag. Centrals only. You have 3 minutes. My men are already en route. What? No, I'm not going anywhere with. The man who was shot wasn't random, Alicia. And if you stay there, you'll be next. The line went dead. I stood frozen, phone still pressed to my ear as sirens wailed in the distance. How had my 911 call connected to Marco? Why was he sending men to my apartment? And what did he mean the shooting wasn't random? 5 years ago I was a different person. 29, ambitious, working double shifts at Metropolitan Hospital's emergency department. That's where I first met him. Not as a patient, but as a visitor bringing flowers to an elderly woman recovering from surgery. He caught my eye immediately. Tall, with olive skin and dark eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Expensive suit, but worn with a casual confidence that suggested he was comfortable in any setting. When he asked for directions to the cafeteria, I offered to show him myself, breaking my own rule about maintaining professional distance. I'm Marco, he said, extending his hand. Alicia, I replied, noticing the warmth of his palm against mine, the subtle calluses that seemed at odds with his polished appearance. Italian, he asked, noting my last name on my badge. On my mother's side. Moore is my father's name. Ah, so we share something already. His smile was disarming. Perhaps we could share a coffee sometime as well? I should have said no. Hospital policy discouraged dating patients' relatives. But something about him made me nod, scribble my number on a prescription pad and tear it off for him. 3 days later, we had our first date at a small Italian restaurant I'd never heard of, where the owner greeted Marco like family and insisted on serving us himself. The food was exquisite, the wine perfectly paired, and Marco's attention made me feel like the only woman in the world. For 6 weeks, we existed in a bubble of candlelit dinners, walks along the riverfront and conversations that stretched until dawn. He was charming, intelligent, and intensely private about his work. Something in family business management, he'd say with a smile that invited no further questions. I was falling for him. Hard. Until the night a gunshot victim was rushed into my ear. A young man with a bullet in his shoulder and terror in his eyes. As I prepped him for surgery, he grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. You're Marco Santori's girl, he whispered, his eyes widening in recognition. Please tell him I didn't talk. I swear I didn't say anything. I froze, surgical tape still in hand. I don't know what you're talking about. The Santori family. I'm loyal, I swear. Tell him. A nurse pulled me away as the surgical team took over, but the damage was done. That night, I researched the name Santori, and discovered what Marco had never told me. His family controlled one of the city's most powerful criminal organizations, with fingers in everything from protection rackets to political corruption. The charming man who kissed me goodnight was the same man who ordered kneecappings over breakfast. I never answered his calls again. Now, 5 years later, as I stared at the body on the street below my apartment, I realized my past had somehow crashed into my present in the most impossible way. My 911 call had reached Marco Santori instead of emergency services. The distant sirens grew louder. 3 minutes, he'd said. I had maybe 2 left. Against every rational thought, I grabbed my emergency backpack, the one I'd prepared after moving to this neighborhood known for its occasional flooding. Passport, cash, medications, a change of clothes. Basic survival gear. As I zipped it closed, a sharp knock came at my door. I froze, backpack clutched to my chest. Another knock, more insistent this time. Ms. Moore? It's Detective Ramirez, Chicago PD. We need to speak with you about the incident outside. Relief flooded through me. The police, not Marco's men. I moved toward the door, reaching for the chain, then stopped. Something felt wrong. The timing was too perfect, the response too quick. And how did they know which apartment to come to? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Don't open the door. Not police. Fire escape. Now. A third knock, harder. Ms. Moore, we know you're in there. Open up. I backed away from the door, heart hammering against my ribs. Trust my instincts or trust Marco Santori? Neither option seemed safe. But Marco's warning echoed in my head. The man who was shot wasn't random. And if you stay there, you'll be next. The door shuddered as someone slammed against it. Decision made. I raced to my bedroom window that opened onto the fire escape, throwing it open just as I heard the splintering of wood from my front door. Cold night air hit my face as I climbed out, the metal grating of the fire escape slick with recent rain. She's running, a voice shouted from inside my apartment. Definitely not police procedure. I scrambled down the fire escape, the rusty metal creaking beneath my weight. 3 floors down, my feet slipping on the wet steps. A black SUV idled in the alley below, its engine a low purr in the night. The back door swung open. A man in a dark suit stepped out, his face half hidden in shadow. Ms. Moore. Get in. How do I know you're with Marco? I demanded, clinging to the railing. He sighed, clearly impatient. Because if I wasn't, I wouldn't be asking nicely. He glanced up past me. And because those men breaking into your apartment will be down here in about 30 seconds. As if on cue, I heard shouting from above. Looking up, I saw silhouettes against the light of my apartment window. Fine. I descended the last flight and slid into the SUV's back seat. The man followed, pulling the door shut behind us. The vehicle accelerated immediately, tires squealing against wet pavement. Put this on. The man handed me a baseball cap and sunglasses. And stay down. I complied, ducking below window level as we sped through the alleyway and onto a main street. My mind raced with questions, but survival instinct kept me silent. The driver navigated through the city with practiced efficiency, taking turns seemingly at random, doubling back occasionally. After what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, my phone buzzed again. Are you safe? Marco's text read. Define safe, I typed back. I'm in an SUV with strangers heading God knows where after fleeing armed men who broke into my apartment. So no, not feeling particularly safe. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then, I'm sorry about this, Alicia. Truly. But it was necessary. What's happening? Why did my 911 call connect to you? The 3 dots appeared again, lingering longer this time. Finally, it's complicated. I'll explain when you arrive. Arrive where? Somewhere secure. I looked up to see we'd left the city behind, driving along a dark highway flanked by trees. The man beside me noticed my movement. Another 15 minutes, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Mr. Santori is waiting. Who were those men at my apartment? He exchanged a glance with the driver. Not our people. That's not an answer. It's all I'm authorized to tell you. I leaned back against the leather seat, exhaustion suddenly washing over me. The adrenaline that had carried me down the fire escape was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness and the beginnings of shock. The man who was shot, I said quietly. Is he dead? Another exchanged glance. Yes. Did Marco's people kill him? The man beside me turned to face me fully for the first time. He had kind eyes that seemed at odds with his imposing frame. Ms. Moore, with all due respect, you should save your questions for Mr. Santori. And if I don't want to see Marco? A small smile touched his lips. Then you picked a strange way to spend your evening. I fell silent, watching the dark landscape blur past the windows. He was right. Whatever was happening, I was committed now. The moment I climbed into this vehicle, I'd made my choice. My mind drifted back to the last time I saw Marco 5 years ago. Our final date before I discovered the truth. He'd taken me to the lakefront, a picnic at sunset. The memory was still vivid. His jacket draped around my shoulders against the evening chill, the way he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his eyes serious as he told me he was falling in love with me. I know it's fast, he'd said, but when you know, you know. I'd kissed him then, believing every word. 24 hours later, I knew who he really was and disappeared from his life without explanation. Now here I was, running from unknown threats straight back to the man I'd once fled. The SUV turned onto a private road, winding through dense trees before emerging at a large iron gate. It opened silently as we approached, closing behind us once we passed through. Beyond stretched a long driveway leading to what I could only describe as a modern fortress. A sprawling mansion of glass and stone, discreetly lit, with a commanding view of Lake Michigan in the distance. "Welcome to Lakeside," the man beside me said as we pulled up to the entrance. "Mr. Santori's private residence." The front door opened before we'd even stopped, and there he was. Marco Santori, silhouetted against the warm light from inside. 5 years had changed him. His face was leaner, harder somehow, with threads of silver at his temples that hadn't been there before. But his eyes were the same, dark, intense, seeing everything. As I stepped from the vehicle, our gazes locked. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "Hello, Alicia," he finally said, his voice exactly as I remembered it. "I wish we were meeting again under better circumstances." "What circumstances are these exactly?" I asked, clutching my backpack like a shield. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like kidnapping." A flicker of something, amusement, regret, crossed his face. "Let's call it protective custody. I didn't ask for your protection. You called 911, didn't you?" He stepped aside, gesturing toward the open door. "Please come inside. It's not safe out here." I hesitated, then walked past him into the house, catching a hint of his cologne, sandalwood and something distinctly his, as I passed. The same scent that used to linger on my skin after our nights together. "You have questions," he said, following me into a spacious foyer with soaring ceilings. "I have answers. But first, are you hurt? Do you need anything?" The genuine concern in his voice caught me off guard. I turned to face him, suddenly aware of how disheveled I must look. Hair wild from the wind, clothes rumpled, face pale with shock. "I need to know why my 911 call connected to you instead of emergency services," I said. "And I need to know why there are men breaking into my apartment and why someone was shot outside my building. And I need to know why you think I'm in danger." Marco studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led me through the house to what appeared to be his office. A large room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, now a vast darkness beyond the glass. A desk dominated one end, sleek and modern, with multiple monitors displaying what looked like security feeds. "Would you like a drink?" he asked, moving to a bar cart in the corner. "I want answers, Marco. Not alcohol." He poured himself 2 fingers of amber liquid anyway. "Sometimes answers go down easier with a little help." He took a sip, then set the glass down. "Your 911 call reached me because it was designed to." "Designed to?" I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. "That's impossible. Emergency calls don't just randomly redirect to crime bosses." Marco leaned against his desk, arms crossed. In the soft lighting of his office, I could see the changes 5 years had wrought more clearly. Fine lines around his eyes, a thin scar along his jawline that hadn't been there before. 5 years ago, after you..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Ended things, I was concerned for your safety." "My safety?" I laughed, the sound brittle even to my own ears. "That's rich coming from you." His expression remained impassive. "Whether you believe it or not, walking away from me put you at risk. People in my world might have seen you as leverage, or worse, assumed you knew things you shouldn't. So what did you do?" "I put protective measures in place." One of them was a system that would redirect any emergency call from your number to me first, then to actual emergency services if I didn't respond within 10 seconds. I stared at him trying to process this information. You hacked the 911 system? That's federal crime territory, Marco. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Add it to my tab. He straightened, moving toward one of the monitors. The system was only supposed to be temporary until I was certain no one would target you. But then things got complicated. Complicated how? He tapped a few keys, bringing up what looked like surveillance footage. 2 nights ago you treated a patient at the free clinic where you volunteer. Male mid-30s, knife wound to the abdomen. I frowned thinking back. Yes. He said it was a kitchen accident. His name is Vito Calabrese. He works for me. Marco's eyes met mine. That was no kitchen accident. He was carrying sensitive information and was attacked by rivals trying to intercept it. The room seemed to tilt slightly. I steadied myself against a nearby chair. So I unknowingly treated one of your, what? Couriers? Hitmen. Vito handles information, not violence, Marco said as if that distinction mattered. But yes, you treated him. And someone noticed. The man who was shot tonight, I said slowly, pieces falling into place. He was watching me because of this Vito person? Marco's expression darkened. His name was Daniel Reeves. And he wasn't just watching you, he was using you as bait. Bait? For what? For me. Marco turned back to the monitors, bringing up another image. A badge. FBI. Reeves was an undercover federal agent. Part of a task force that's been trying to build a case against my organization for years. My legs finally gave out and I sank into the chair. An FBI agent was shot outside my apartment, and you think I'm in danger? Marco, I'm a nurse who accidentally treated one of your men. I didn't do anything wrong. In their eyes, you're connected now. His voice was gentle but firm. They think you're an asset of mine, possibly romantically involved again. Why else would you treat one of my men and not report the suspicious wound? Because I'm a healthcare professional who respects patient confidentiality. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think clearly. This is insane. I need to go to the police, explain everything. The men who broke into your apartment weren't police, Alicia. They were federal agents operating outside official channels. Going to the authorities right now would be walking into a trap. And I should believe you because... Marco moved closer, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. Because despite what you think of me, I have never lied to you. You never told me who you really were, I countered. I never claimed to be something I wasn't. He held my gaze. I just didn't volunteer information I knew would drive you away. Well, you were right about that. A tense silence fell between us. Outside, rain had begun to fall again, pattering against the massive windows. Marco's security system hummed quietly in the background, monitors displaying various angles of the property. So what now? Finally asked. I can't stay here forever. Just until I can ensure your safety. He moved to a sideboard and poured a glass of water, offering it to me. My people are working to contain the situation. I accepted the water, suddenly aware of how thirsty I was. And what does contain the situation mean exactly? More violence? More deaths? Marco's expression hardened. It means making sure no one else gets hurt, especially you. As I sipped the water, exhaustion washed over me in waves. The events of the night, the shooting, the escape, the revelations, all crashed down at once. Marco must have noticed because his voice softened. You should rest. I've had a room prepared for you. I'm not staying the night, I protested even as my body betrayed me with a massive yawn. Alicia. He said my name with such gentleness that I looked up, startled. It's nearly 4 a.m. You're exhausted. Nothing will be solved in the next few hours. Please get some sleep. We can talk more in the morning. I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but fatigue was making it hard to think clearly. Fine. But this isn't over. It never is with us, is it? A sad smile touched his lips. A woman appeared in the doorway, tall, elegant, with a no-nonsense expression. The blue room is ready, Mr. Santori. Thank you, Diana. Marco nodded to her, then turned back to me. Diana will show you to your room. There are clothes, toiletries, everything you might need. You were very confident I'd agree to stay, I observed. I was hopeful, he corrected. There's a difference. I stood, swaying slightly with fatigue. One more question. The system that redirected my call, why was it still active after 5 years? Marco's expression became unreadable. Good night, Alicia. We'll talk in the morning. Diana led me through the sprawling house to a beautifully appointed bedroom with lake views and an attached bathroom larger than my entire apartment. True to Marco's word, the closet contained clothing in approximately my size, and the bathroom was stocked with high-end toiletries. Mr. Santori had these brought in when he knew you were coming, Diana explained, noting my surprise at the preparations. He couldn't have known I'd call 911 tonight, I said. Diana's expression remained neutral. Mr. Santori likes to be prepared for contingencies. After she left, I took a long hot shower, trying to wash away the night's events along with the grime of my escape. The adrenaline had completely worn off now, leaving me hollow and exhausted. Questions still swirled in my mind, but they were becoming fuzzy, indistinct. I slipped into the silk pajamas that had been provided, another eerily accurate guess about my preferences, and climbed into the king-sized bed. Despite my determination to stay alert, to plan my next move, sleep claimed me almost instantly. I dreamed of Marco as he was 5 years ago, laughing as we walked along the lake shore. In the dream he turned to me, his expression suddenly serious. You were never supposed to call that number again, he said, but his lips didn't move with the words. I woke with a start, sunlight streaming through partially opened curtains. For a moment I didn't recognize my surroundings. The elegant room, the soft linens, the sound of waves in the distance. Then it all came rushing back. The shooting. The call. I checked my phone, nearly noon. I'd slept for almost 8 hours. There were no messages, no missed calls. The world outside this fortress continued, unaware of my personal drama. A soft knock at the door made me sit up. Yes. Breakfast is ready whenever you are, Miss Moore, Diana's voice called through the door. Mr. Santori asked me to inform you that he's in his study when you're ready to continue your conversation. Thank you, I called back, hearing her footsteps retreat down the hallway. I dressed in clothes from the closet, simple jeans and a sweater that fit surprisingly well, and made my way downstairs, guided by the smell of coffee. The kitchen was state-of-the-art, all gleaming surfaces and high-end appliances. A spread of breakfast foods waited on the island. Pastries, fruit, eggs kept warm under a silver dome. I helped myself to coffee and a croissant, eating quickly before making my way to Marco's study. The house was quiet, almost eerily so for its size. I wondered how many people lived here, or if Marco kept the place staffed primarily with his security personnel. The door to the study was ajar. I knocked lightly before pushing it open. Marco sat at his desk, phone to his ear, speaking rapid Italian. He looked up as I entered, his expression softening. He gestured for me to come in, wrapping up his call with what sounded like firm instructions. Did you sleep well? He asked, setting down his phone. As well as can be expected, given the circumstances. I took a seat across from him. You didn't answer my question last night. He didn't pretend not to know what I meant. Why was the system still active after 5 years? Yes. Marco leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Because I never stopped caring about your safety, Alicia. Even after you walked away. The simple honesty in his voice caught me off guard. I'd expected excuses, deflection, maybe even a confession of surveillance. Not this straightforward admission of concern. I struggled to find the right words. That's either touching or terrifying depending on how you look at it. A small smile touched his lips. I've been called worse things than touching. I'm sure you have. I leaned forward. Marco, I need to understand what's happening. All of it. No more partial explanations or deflections. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. But first, there's something you should see. He turned one of his monitors toward me. On the screen was a news report, the volume muted. The headline scrolled across the bottom. FBI agent found dead in Westlake neighborhood. Authorities investigating. My apartment building was visible in the background. Police tape cordoning off the area where the body had been. Where I had seen the shooting happen. They're not mentioning that he was undercover, Marco said. Or that there's a witness missing from the scene. Me. I was the missing witness. What happens if I go back? I asked quietly. If I tell them what I saw. Marco's expression darkened. Best case. You're detained for questioning about your connection to my organization, possibly charged as an accessory after the fact for treating Vito without reporting it. And worst case. You disappear. His voice was flat. Reeves wasn't operating alone, Alicia. He was part of a specialized unit that doesn't always play by the rules. And right now they believe you're involved with me. Because I treated one of your men? Because you treated one of my men, then disappeared from the scene of a federal agent's murder, and are now unreachable. He leaned forward. From their perspective, the evidence points to you being complicit. I felt the blood drain from my face. This can't be happening. I'm afraid it is. Marco's voice was gentle but firm. But I promise you I'm going to fix this. How? I demanded. How exactly do you plan to fix a situation where I'm caught between the FBI and the Mafia? Marco's eyes met mine, steady and determined. By giving them what they really want. Which is me. You. I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. What do you mean, give them you? Marco stood, moving to the window that overlooked the lake. Morning sunlight glinted off the water, creating a stark contrast with the gravity of our conversation. The task force investigating me has been building a case for years, he said, his back to me. They're close, closer than I've let on to my associates. Agent Reeves was their point man, gathering the final pieces they need. And now he's dead. I watched Marco carefully. Did you order the hit? He turned, his expression hardening. No. Contrary to what you might think, I don't solve all my problems with violence. Then who killed him? That's what my people are trying to determine. He returned to his desk, tapping a few keys on his computer. The shooting doesn't fit our profile. It was messy, public, not how we handle things. How reassuring, I muttered. Marco ignored my sarcasm. What's clear is that someone wanted Reeves dead and wanted to implicate you in the process. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Implicate me? I'm a nurse, Marco. I'm nobody in your world. You were seen with me 5 years ago. You treated one of my men 2 days ago. And you were the only witness to a federal agent's murder. He looked up from the screen. In their eyes, that makes you somebody. I ran my hands through my hair, trying to think clearly. So what's your plan? Turn yourself in? Cut a deal. Something like that. He leaned back in his chair. I have leverage they want. Information on other organizations, corrupt officials, international connections. Enough to make it worth their while to clear your name in exchange. You'd do that. I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. Sacrifice yourself for me? His eyes met mine, dark and intense. Yes. The simple answer hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I looked away first. There has to be another way, I said. One that doesn't end with either of us in federal prison or worse. I'm open to suggestions. I stood, pacing the length of his office. First, we need to figure out who really killed Reeves. If it wasn't your people, then who had motive? The list is long, Marco said dryly. Federal agents specializing in organized crime tend to make enemies. But the timing is specific, I insisted. Right after I treated your man Vito. Right outside my apartment building. Someone is connecting dots that create a specific picture. Marco watched me pace, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. You're right. This feels targeted, not just at me or Reeves, but at both of us. A third party, I said, thinking aloud. Someone who benefits if you're taken down and the FBI task force is thrown into chaos. Clever girl. A small smile touched his lips. You always were quick. I ignored the compliment. What was Vito carrying when he was attacked? You said it was sensitive information. Marco hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell me. If I'm caught in the middle of this, I deserve to know, I pressed. He nodded slowly. Financial records. Evidence of money laundering through several legitimate businesses. Not my operations, a rival family's. The Russos. I guessed, remembering a name from my research 5 years ago. Surprise flickered across his face. You did your homework. I wanted to know exactly who I was walking away from. I stopped pacing, facing him directly. So Vito had evidence that could damage the Russo family. He was attacked but managed to escape with the information. Then he came to my clinic, where you treated him without asking too many questions, Marco continued. Someone, likely Russo's people, noticed and reported back. They would have assumed you were connected to my organization. Then they arranged for Reeves to be outside my building, I said, the pieces falling into place. Knowing he was investigating you, knowing I had treated one of your men. A perfect storm, Marco finished. Reeves dies, you're implicated, I'm connected to both. The FBI task force focuses on me instead of the Russos, and their money laundering operation continues undetected. The elegant simplicity of the plan sent a chill through me. We were all pawns. It appears so. Marco's expression darkened. But I don't take kindly to being manipulated. So what do? We give them what they don't expect. He stood, moving around the desk to stand before me. The truth. The truth. I laughed without humor. To whom? The FBI, who thinks I'm your accomplice? The Russos, who arranged a federal agent's murder outside my home. To all of them. His eyes held mine. But first we need proof. A knock at the door interrupted us. Diana entered, her expression tense. Mr. Santori, there's a situation. Security picked up unusual activity at the north perimeter. Marco's demeanor shifted instantly. All business now. How many? At least 4, possibly more. Armed. Federal, he asked. Diana shook her head. Not their profile. More likely Russo's men. Marco turned to me. It seems our theory is about to be tested. Stay here with Diana. Where are you going? I asked, alarm rising in my throat. To secure the house. He moved to a painting on the wall, swinging it aside to reveal a safe. He entered a combination and removed a handgun, checking it with practiced efficiency. Marco. I'll be fine. He tucked the gun into a shoulder holster. Diana is former military. She'll keep you safe if anything happens. Before I could protest further, he was gone, the door closing firmly behind him. Diana moved to the desk, pressing a button that caused metal shutters to descend over the windows. Standard security protocol, she explained, noting my startled expression. The glass is bulletproof, but we don't take chances. How often does this happen? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Armed men at the perimeter? She raised an eyebrow. Less often than you might think. Mr. Santori generally maintains better relations with his competitors. Until now. Until now, she agreed. I sank back into my chair, the reality of the situation hitting me anew. Less than 24 hours ago, I was a normal nurse with a normal life. Now I was in a fortress under potential attack, caught between crime families and federal agents, with only a man I'd once fled for protection. He never stopped watching out for you, you know, Diana said suddenly, breaking into my thoughts. I looked up, surprised. What? Mr. Santori. After you left. She checked a tablet displaying security feeds. He made sure you were safe, made sure no one connected to his business ever came near you. That's... I struggled for the right word. Invasive. Diana's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. He called it insurance. I called it pining. Before I could respond to that bombshell, the door opened and Marco returned, his expression grim but composed. False alarm? I asked hopefully. No. He removed his jacket, revealing a tear in his shirt sleeve. Blood seeped through the fabric. Very real alarm. I was on my feet instantly, nurse instincts taking over. You're hurt. It's nothing. A graze. Let me see. I moved toward him, not waiting for permission. I am a medical professional, in case you've forgotten. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. How could I forget? It's what brought us together in the first place. I paused, my hands already reaching for his injured arm. What do you mean? We met when you were visiting a patient. Something flickered in his eyes. Hesitation, perhaps even vulnerability. That's not entirely accurate. Diana, get me a first aid kit, I said, not taking my eyes off Marco. And then give us the room. She nodded, returning moments later with a comprehensive medical kit before discreetly exiting. I guided Marco to a chair, helping him remove his shirt to reveal the wound. A bullet grazed across his upper arm, bleeding but not deep. What did you mean that's not entirely accurate? I asked as I cleaned the wound with antiseptic. Marco winced slightly at the sting. The woman I was visiting, The elderly patient. That was my mother. I paused, antiseptic wipe in hand. Your mother? You told me it was a family friend. Another omission, not a lie. His eyes met mine. She was using her maiden name. Security precaution. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference? He asked quietly. When you found out who I was, would knowing she was my mother have changed your mind about leaving? I resumed cleaning his wound, buying time to consider his question. I don't know, I finally admitted. Probably not. Then there's your answer. I applied a dressing to his arm, securing it with medical tape. What happened outside? Russo's men, as Diana suspected. 4 of them, testing our defenses. His expression hardened. They won't be reporting back. I didn't ask if that meant they were dead. I didn't want to know. They'll send more, I said instead. Yes. And the FBI won't be far behind. He stood, testing his bandaged arm. We need to move quickly. Move where? Do what? Get you somewhere safe, then deal with the Russos. He moved to his desk, pressing a button on the intercom. Diana, prepare the boat. We leave in 20 minutes. Boat. I echoed. Marco, I'm not going anywhere until you explain exactly what's happening. He turned to face me, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. What's happening is that the Russo family has decided to eliminate 2 problems at once. Me and the federal task force investigating them. They're using you as the linchpin. Knowing your connection to me would draw me out and your witness status would focus the FBI's attention on me instead of them. And it worked, I said quietly. Only partially. He moved closer, his voice dropping. They didn't count on one thing. What's that? That I would do anything to protect you. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Even if it means burning everything I've built to the ground. The declaration hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to face. I stepped back, creating distance. The boat, I said, redirecting. Where are we going? I have a property on a private island in the lake. More secure than here, accessible only by water. He checked his watch. Pack whatever you need from your room. Diana will show you to the dock. And then what? We hide while the Russos and FBI tear each other apart. No. His expression was resolute. Then I end this, permanently. The finality in his voice sent a chill through me. By giving yourself up to the FBI? If necessary. Marco. Alicia. He cut me off gently. Time is something we don't have right now. Please go with Diana. I'll explain everything once we're secure. I wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but the urgency in his voice was unmistakable. I nodded once, then turned to leave. Alicia, he called as I reached the door. I looked back. Thank you for the medical attention, and for not running away again. Yet. The vulnerability in those last words caught me off guard. For a moment, I saw past the crime boss to the man I'd started falling for 5 years ago. The man who'd made me laugh, who'd listened to my dreams, who'd looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. Don't make me regret it, I said softly, then left to find Diana. The boat was not what I expected. When Marco mentioned a boat, I'd pictured something sleek and ostentatious, a gleaming yacht befitting a man of his position. Instead, Diana led me to a weathered fishing vessel, sturdy and inconspicuous among the other boats dotting the private marina. It's less likely to draw attention, she explained, noting my surprise. Mr. Santori has more impressive vessels, but today calls for discretion. I climbed aboard, clutching the small bag of belongings I'd hastily packed. The boat's interior was surprisingly comfortable despite its utilitarian exterior, clean, well-maintained, with a small cabin below deck. Marco joined us minutes later, having changed into dark jeans and a sweater that concealed his injured arm. He spoke briefly with the captain, a weathered man with salt and pepper hair who nodded at his instructions without question. It's about 40 minutes to the island, Marco told me as the engines rumbled to life. We should be safe on the water. Should be, I repeated, gripping the railing as we pulled away from the dock. That's reassuring. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Your sarcasm hasn't changed. Neither has your talent for understatement. I watched his shoreline property recede into the distance. Those men who came, were they killed? Marco's expression sobered. 2 were. 2 retreated. I absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the man beside me, the one who'd bandaged scraped knees and brought soup when I had the flu 5 years ago, with someone whose life involved such casual violence. Does it bother you? I asked quietly. The killing. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Yes. Contrary to what you might think, I don't enjoy violence. I see it as a regrettable necessity in my position. A position you chose. A position I inherited, he corrected. The Santori family business has been passed down for generations. My father groomed me for it from childhood. There's always a choice, Marco. His eyes met mine, dark and serious. Is there? When your entire family, everyone you love, depends on you stepping up. When walking away means abandoning them to enemies who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate the entire bloodline. He shook his head. Some choices are illusions, Alicia. I had no answer for that. We fell silent as the boat cut through the water, leaving a white wake behind us. Lake Michigan stretched around us, vast and blue under the midday sun. In the distance, Chicago's skyline glittered like a mirage. My mother liked you, Marco said suddenly, breaking the silence. After you treated her. I turned to him, surprised by the change in subject. I barely remember her. There were so many patients. You spent extra time with her. She was frightened about her surgery and you sat with her, explained everything, held her hand. His voice softened with the memory. She told me about the kind nurse with the gentle hands and warm smile. Said you made her feel safe. The memory surfaced slowly. An elderly woman with familiar dark eyes, scheduled for gallbladder surgery, anxious about the anesthesia. I had stayed past my shift to comfort her. That's why you came looking for me, I realized. Not a chance meeting at all. I wanted to thank the person who'd shown such kindness to my mother. His gaze was steady on mine. Meeting you was supposed to be a simple gesture of gratitude. I never expected to feel something, I finished when he trailed off. Yes. The simple admission hung between us, weighted with 5 years of unspoken words. Before I could respond, the captain called out to Marco, pointing to something in the distance. A sleek speedboat was approaching rapidly from the direction of the city. Get below, Marco ordered, his demeanor shifting instantly from reflective to alert. Now, Alicia. What is it? Trouble. He guided me firmly toward the cabin stairs. Stay down until I come for you. Diana was already moving, retrieving what looked like a rifle from a hidden compartment. The casual efficiency with which she checked the weapon sent a chill through me. Marco. Please. His eyes met mine, urgent now. I need to know you're safe. Something in his expression, raw concern, perhaps even fear, made me comply. I descended into the cabin, heart pounding as I heard footsteps above, rapid instructions being exchanged. The cabin had no windows, leaving me blind to what was happening on deck. I paced the small space, straining to hear anything beyond the rumble of engines. Then came the sound I'd been dreading, the sharp crack of gunfire. One shot. Then another. Then a rapid succession that made me drop to the floor, covering my head instinctively. The boat lurched suddenly, changing direction with enough force to send me sliding across the cabin floor. More gunfire, closer now. A shout. The engines roared louder as our boat accelerated. Then silence, broken only by the continued rumble of our vessel cutting through the water. I remained frozen, counting seconds that stretched into minutes. Finally, footsteps approached the cabin door. It swung open to reveal Marco, a fresh cut above his eyebrow but otherwise unharmed. Are you okay? I asked, scrambling to my feet. Fine. He offered his hand, helping me up. Russo's men. They must have been watching the marina. What happened to them? They won't be following us. His tone made it clear he wouldn't elaborate further. I followed him back to the deck, where Diana was speaking quietly with the captain. The speedboat was nowhere in sight. We've changed course, Marco explained, guiding me to a seat. We'll approach the island from the north instead. It will take longer, but it's safer. I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the constant tension, the persistent threat. Marco, when does this end? How many more people will die because I called the wrong number? You didn't call the wrong number, he said quietly. You called exactly the right number, the only one that could have saved your life last night. At what cost? I gestured to the empty water where the confrontation had occurred. More violence, more death. They made their choice when they came after us. His voice hardened. When they used you as bait. I looked away, watching the shoreline in the distance. What happens when we reach this island of yours? We regroup. Contact some people I trust. Build a case against the Russos that will satisfy the FBI and clear your name. And yours. A sad smile touched his lips. My name was never going to be cleared, Alicia. That's not how this ends for me. Before I could respond, the island came into view. A densely wooded landmass rising from the lake, perhaps 100 acres in total. As we drew closer, I could make out a modern structure nestled among the trees, its glass and stone architecture blending harmoniously with the natural surroundings. Welcome to Sanctuary, Marco said as we approached a small, private dock. The one place no one knows about. Not my associates, not my enemies, not even most of my family. It's beautiful, I admitted, taking in the pristine shoreline, the towering pines, the sense of isolation that felt more like protection than abandonment. It was supposed to be my retirement plan. He helped me from the boat once we docked. A place to disappear to when the time came. And now it's your sanctuary too. At least until this is over. The house was even more impressive up close. A masterpiece of modern architecture with walls of glass offering panoramic views of the lake, yet strategically positioned to remain invisible from the water. Inside, the space was open and airy, furnished with a minimalist aesthetic that spoke of taste rather than ostentation. You'll be comfortable here, Marco said, leading me through the main living area. There's everything you might need: food, clothing, medical supplies. The generator provides power and there's a satellite connection for communications. How long do you expect us to stay? Not long. A day, maybe two. He moved to what appeared to be a state-of-the-art security system, checking various monitors. Just until I can arrange a meeting. With the FBI. With someone who can end this cleanly. He turned to face me. Someone who can ensure your safety when I'm gone. The finality in his voice sent a chill through me. What do you mean when you're gone? Marco's expression softened. Alicia, there are only two ways this ends for me. Prison or death. I've accepted that. What I won't accept is you suffering the same fate because of me. There has to be another way, I insisted, moving closer to him. If we can prove the Russos killed Reeves. It won't change what I am or what I've done. He reached out, his fingers lightly touching my cheek in a gesture so tender it made my breath catch. But it will give you back your life. That's all that matters now. I wanted to argue, to insist that his life mattered too, but the words caught in my throat. How could I say that to a man whose world represented everything I'd spent my life fighting against as a healer? How could I admit that despite everything, some part of me still cared what happened to him? Diana appeared in the doorway, breaking the moment. The perimeter is secure, Mr. Santori. I've activated all protocols. Thank you, Diana. Marco stepped back, his hand falling away from my face. Please show Alicia to her room. I need to make some calls. As Diana led me through the house to a spacious bedroom overlooking the lake, my mind raced with conflicting emotions. Fear for my safety warred with concern for Marco's fate. Anger at being dragged into his dangerous world battled with grudging gratitude for his protection. And beneath it all, a question I couldn't silence. Why did he still care what happened to me after 5 years of silence? The room was beautiful, serene blues and whites reflecting the lake beyond the windows. A king-sized bed with luxurious linens. A bathroom stocked with high-end toiletries. Like the guest room at his mainland house, everything had been prepared with thoughtful attention to detail. There are clothes in the closet, Diana said, opening a door to reveal a selection of items in approximately my size. Mr. Santori had them brought in some time ago. Some time ago? I repeated, confused. But he couldn't have known I'd be here. Diana's expression remained neutral. As I said before, Mr. Santori likes to be prepared for contingencies. After she left, I explored the room, trying to make sense of Marco's preparations. The clothes weren't just basics. There were sweaters in colors I favored, jeans in my exact size, even running shoes similar to my preferred brand. It was as if he'd created a space specifically for me, long before I'd called that fateful 911 number. I showered and changed, the hot water washing away some of the tension from the boat journey. When I emerged, feeling somewhat refreshed, I found a note slipped under my door. Join me for dinner at 7. We need to talk. The simple invitation felt surreal given our circumstances, like being asked on a date while the world burned around us. Yet I found myself checking the time, realizing I had several hours to collect my thoughts before facing Marco again. I spent the afternoon exploring the island house, discovering a library filled with first editions, a kitchen stocked with gourmet ingredients, a wine cellar that would make a sommelier weep with envy. Everything spoke of refined taste and careful curation, a side of Marco I'd glimpsed during our brief relationship but never fully appreciated. At precisely 7, I made my way to the dining room, where I found Marco setting the table himself. He'd changed into a simple button-down shirt and dark pants, his injured arm moving with only slight stiffness. The cut above his eyebrow had been cleaned but would likely leave another scar. He looked up as I entered, his expression warming. "You look rested." "As rested as one can be while hiding from killers on a private island," I replied, but without the edge that had characterized our earlier exchanges. A small smile touched his lips. "Fair enough." He gestured to the table. "I hope you're hungry. I'm not much of a chef, but I can manage a few Italian classics." "You cook?" I couldn't hide my surprise. My mother insisted all her children learn. Said it was shameful for a Santori to rely on others for something as fundamental as food. He pulled out a chair for me. "Wine." I nodded, taking the offered seat. "Please." He poured 2 glasses of deep red wine, then disappeared briefly into the kitchen, returning with 2 plates of pasta that smelled divine. "Cacio e pepe," he explained, setting one before me. Simple but satisfying. We ate in surprisingly comfortable silence for a few minutes. The simple meal indeed satisfying after the stress of the day. Finally, Marco set down his fork and looked at me directly. "I've arranged a meeting for tomorrow morning," he said, "with Assistant Director Callahan of the FBI. I nearly choked on my wine. "You're meeting with the FBI?" "Voluntarily." "Yes. Callahan is one of the few federal agents I trust to be both competent and honest. He's been after me for years, but he plays by the rules." "And you're just going to, what? Turn yourself in?" Marco took a sip of his wine before answering. "I'm going to offer him a deal. My cooperation and testimony against the Russo family in exchange for your complete exoneration and protection." "Marco." "It's already in motion, Alicia." His voice was gentle but firm. "This ends tomorrow one way or another." I set down my glass, studying his face, the resolve in his eyes, the set of his jaw. "Why are you doing this? After 5 years, why risk everything for me?" The question hung between us, loaded with all the things we'd never said. Marco's eyes held mine, dark and intense in the soft lighting. "Because some debts can never be repaid," he said quietly. "And some people are worth any sacrifice." His words settled over me like a physical weight. I searched his face for any sign of manipulation or calculation, but found only raw honesty, a vulnerability I'd never seen in him before. "What debt?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What are you talking about?" Marco set his wine glass down, his fingers lingering on the stem. For a moment he seemed to debate with himself, weighing how much to reveal. "5 years ago when you treated my mother," he began, his voice low and measured, "it wasn't for a routine gallbladder surgery as I led you to believe." I frowned, trying to recall the details of a patient from so long ago. "Then what was it?" "She had been shot." His eyes met mine, unflinching. "A rival family's attempt to get to me through her. The bullet missed her heart by centimeters." My breath caught as fragments of memory surfaced. An elderly woman with a chest wound, listed as a car accident victim. Hospital protocol for suspected violence would have involved police notification, but something had been different about that case. The attending physician had handled everything personally. "That's not possible," I said. "I would have remembered a gunshot wound. There would have been protocols, reports. All handled by people on my payroll," Marco confirmed. "The official record shows a car accident with chest trauma from the steering wheel. But you were the nurse who stabilized her in the ER before surgery. You kept her alive until the surgeon arrived." The memory crystallized. The woman's frightened eyes, her hand gripping mine as I monitored her vitals, the way she'd whispered something in Italian as they wheeled her to surgery. "She called me her guardian angel," I said softly, the words coming back to me. Marco's expression softened. "She still does." She credits you with saving her life that night. I was just doing my job. You did more than your job. The surgeon later told me you noticed a secondary bleed that everyone else missed. Without that intervention, she would have died before reaching the operating room. I sat back, processing this revelation. So when you came to the hospital afterward, I came to see the woman who saved my mother's life. His voice roughened with emotion. I expected to thank you and leave. I never expected to meet someone who would change everything. Change what exactly? My perspective. My priorities. He leaned forward slightly. For the first time, I saw a future beyond the family business. A possibility of something different. The admission hung between us, heavy with implication. I took a sip of wine, buying time to steady my voice. Then why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning? About who you were, about your mother. Would you have given me a chance if I had? He countered gently. If I'd introduced myself as Marco Santori, head of a crime family, would you have agreed to that first coffee? No, I admitted. Probably not. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping you separate from that part of my life. In reality, I was being selfish. His expression turned rueful. I wanted to be the man you thought I was, just for a little while. I studied him across the table. This complex man who moved between worlds of violence and tenderness, whose hands could both harm and heal. 5 years ago, I'd seen only the criminal when I discovered his identity. Now I was beginning to see the whole person, flawed, contradictory, but undeniably human. And tomorrow? I asked. What exactly happens when you meet with this FBI assistant director? I offer him the Russo family on a silver platter. Financial records, witness testimony, evidence of Agent Reeves' murder. Everything he needs to dismantle their organization completely. In exchange for what? Your complete exoneration and protection. A new identity if necessary. A chance to rebuild your life away from all of this. And for you. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The best deal I can negotiate. Reduced charges, possibly witness protection. It won't be freedom, but it will be better than the alternative. Which is a war between families that would leave countless dead, including, eventually, me. He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. This way, at least something good comes from it. My safety isn't worth your life, Marco. To me it is. The simple declaration silenced any argument I might have made. We finished our meal in contemplative silence, the weight of tomorrow's meeting hanging over us. As Marco cleared the plates, I moved to the wall of windows overlooking the lake. Night had fallen, transforming the glass into a mirror that reflected the room behind me. In it, I could see Marco watching me from the kitchen doorway, his expression unguarded in a way it never was when he knew I could see him. What if there was another option? I said suddenly, turning to face him. One that doesn't end with you in prison or witness protection? He approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. I'm listening. The evidence against the Russos, could it be delivered anonymously? Through a lawyer or some other intermediary? Possibly, but it wouldn't carry the same weight without my testimony. And it wouldn't necessarily clear your name. What if we disappeared? I suggested. Both of us. You said yourself this island is unknown to your associates and enemies. Do you have other properties like this? Places no one could find us. Marco's expression shifted, hope and caution warring in his eyes. Several. But Alicia, are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we find a third option. I moved closer to him. One where you don't sacrifice yourself and I don't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. You would consider that? His voice was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself perfectly still. Disappearing with me? It was a question I'd been asking myself since we arrived on the island. The answer had come to me gradually, crystallizing during our dinner conversation. 5 years ago, I ran because I couldn't reconcile the man I was falling for with the criminal you were reported to be. I held his gaze steadily. I was younger then, more absolute in my judgments. Now I understand that people contain multitudes, that good and bad exist in all of us in different measures. And you think there's enough good in me to warrant a second chance? A vulnerability I'd never seen before colored his voice. I think there's enough good in both of us to try finding a better way forward. I took another step closer. One that doesn't end in tragedy. For a long moment, Marco was silent, his dark eyes searching mine as if looking for any sign of doubt or deception. Then slowly he reached out, his hand gently cupping my cheek. "There may be a way," he said softly. "It would be complicated, dangerous at first. We would need to disappear completely. New identities, new lives, no contact with anyone from our past. Could you do that? Walk away from everything you've built?" A sad smile touched his lips. "What I've built has brought nothing but violence and fear. Walking away would be a relief, not a sacrifice. And your mother? Your family? They would understand. Some might even follow in time." His thumb traced a gentle path along my cheekbone. "But Alicia, are you certain? Your career, your friends, your life here. It's a lot to leave behind." I leaned slightly into his touch, allowing myself to acknowledge the connection that had never fully disappeared, despite 5 years and all the revelations between us. "My career can be practiced anywhere. As for friends," I smiled ruefully. 60-hour work weeks don't leave much time for a social life. The truth is, I've been existing, not living, for a long time now. Marco's expression softened. "And you think you could live, really live, with me? Knowing what I've been?" "I think I could live with the man you're trying to become." I covered his hand with mine. "The man who would sacrifice everything to protect someone he cares about. The man who cooks cacio e pepe and keeps his mother's recipes. The man who built this sanctuary not as a fortress but as a home." Something shifted in his eyes, a lightening as if a burden had been lifted. He leaned forward, his forehead resting gently against mine. "It won't be easy," he murmured. "There will be arrangements to make, precautions to take. When has anything worthwhile ever been easy?" I replied. The moment stretched between us, fragile and precious. Then Marco pulled back slightly, his expression becoming more focused. "If we're going to do this, we need to move quickly. Before the meeting tomorrow." He straightened, mind already working through logistics. "I have contacts who can arrange new identities, transfer funds through untraceable channels. We would need to leave tonight." Tonight. I hadn't expected things to move so rapidly. Once I fail to appear for the meeting with Callahan, both the FBI and the Russos will be hunting for us with everything they have. His expression was grave. "Our only advantage will be the head start." The reality of what we were considering hit me fully. This wasn't a romantic fantasy of running away together. It was a permanent, irrevocable choice that would alter the course of both our lives forever. "What about the evidence against the Russos?" I asked. "The information that could clear my name? We can still send it anonymously through channels that can't be traced back to us." Marco took my hands in his. "It won't have the same impact as my testimony, but it should be enough to direct the investigation away from you and toward them." I took a deep breath, weighing everything. The danger, the sacrifice, the uncertain future against the possibility of a new beginning with this complicated man who had never stopped caring for me. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do it. Let's disappear." The relief and hope that transformed Marco's face made my heart skip. For the first time since reconnecting, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd started falling for 5 years ago, before revelations and separations, before violence and fear had shadowed our reunion. "There's something I need to do first," he said, releasing my hands and moving to a nearby desk. He withdrew a pen and paper, writing quickly. "A letter to my mother. She deserves to know I'm safe, even if I can't tell her where I'm going." I watched him write, his handwriting elegant and flowing across the page. When he finished, he sealed the letter in an envelope, writing a name on the front. "Diana will deliver it," he explained, "after we're gone." "Speaking of Diana," I said, suddenly remembering his security chief. "What about her and the captain? They know we're here. They're loyal to me, not the organization. They'll help us leave, then return to the mainland with a story about dropping us at another location." He moved to the security system, typing rapidly on a keyboard. "I'm erasing all digital evidence of our presence here. As far as anyone will be able to tell, we never came to the island." The methodical way he dismantled our digital footprint was both impressive and slightly terrifying, a reminder of the world he came from and the skills he'd developed within it. "How soon can we leave?" I asked. "Within the hour. The boat is fueled and ready." He glanced at me. "Pack only what you absolutely need. Where we're going, we can acquire everything else." "And where is that exactly?" A small smile touched his lips. How do you feel about Costa Rica? I have a property there, a small coffee plantation in the mountains. Self-sufficient, isolated, beautiful. No one in my organization knows about it. Costa Rica, I repeated, trying to imagine it. I've never been further south than Florida. You'll love it. The medical facilities in the nearest town are always looking for experienced nurses. His eyes met mine. If you wanted to continue your work. The thoughtfulness of that detail, that he'd considered not just our safety but my need for purpose, touched me deeply. I'd like that, I said softly. Marco nodded, then checked his watch. We should move quickly. Diana is preparing the boat now. As I turned to go pack my few belongings, Marco caught my hand, pulling me gently back to him. For a moment we stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Alicia, he said, his voice low and serious. Are you certain about this? Once we leave, there's no turning back. I looked up at him. This man who had entered my life twice now through the most improbable circumstances. First as the grateful son of a patient, then as the unexpected voice on a 911 call. Both times bringing danger, yes, but also possibility. A chance to break free from the careful, controlled existence I'd built for myself. I'm certain, I said, and realized I truly was. Let's start over. Together. His smile then was like sunrise breaking through clouds. Transformative, illuminating parts of him I'd never fully seen before. He leaned down, his lips meeting mine in a kiss that felt both like a reunion and a beginning. Gentle at first, then deepening with 5 years of unspoken longing. When we finally broke apart, breathless and slightly dazed, Marco rested his forehead against mine. 5 years ago you walked away when you learned who I really was, he murmured. Today you're choosing to stay, knowing everything. I don't deserve this second chance, but I promise you I won't waste it. See that you don't, I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. I don't make a habit of running away with reformed crime bosses. This is definitely a one-time offer. His laugh, warm and genuine, was perhaps the most beautiful sound I'd heard in years. An hour later we slipped away from the island under the cover of darkness, the boat's running lights dimmed to near invisibility. Diana and the captain would return to the mainland with a carefully constructed story, while we headed for a small private airfield where a plane waited to carry us south. As the island receded into the darkness behind us, I stood at the rail beside Marco, watching the moonlight play across the water. His arm slipped around my waist, a gesture both protective and tender. Second thoughts, he asked quietly. I shook my head, leaning into his embrace. No. Strange as it seems, this feels right. Even though it started with a misdirected 911 call? Maybe it wasn't misdirected at all, I mused. Maybe it was exactly where it needed to go. Marco's arm tightened slightly around me. A second chance neither of us expected. Or deserved, I added. But here we are anyway. As the boat cut through the dark waters toward our uncertain future, I realized that sometimes the wrong number could lead to exactly the right destination. 5 years ago I'd fled from the truth about Marco. Tonight I was running toward a new truth we would create together. One call, one choice, one moment at a time. The night enfolded us like a promise as we sailed toward tomorrow, leaving behind the lives we'd known for the possibility of something better. Something real. Something ours. And it all began with a call that should never have connected, but somehow against all odds did. If you enjoyed this story of unexpected reconnection and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe to Serafina's stories for more tales that will capture your heart and imagination. Have you ever had a moment where fate seemed to intervene in your life? Share your experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how destiny has worked its magic in your lives too. Until next time, remember that sometimes the wrong number can lead to exactly the right person. Thank you for joining me on this journey.